rather than speaking, or if you're having problems with your audio, then you can chat. You can enter in a chat, and then Zach will read that. I think that's it. I think I'll move on to the agenda briefly and pass the meeting over to Doug.
All right, do we want to forward? There we go. So this is our crowded agenda today. Start off with a brief recap and clarification of the tasks before us. If we will remember back before the pandemic, which seems like an eon ago, we had an initial meeting to review what had been done previously by the department and the report that was released. We also discussed the possibility of looking at various other sites. Since that meeting, we've heard from several stakeholders, as well as the director weighed in. And given the short timeframes we're looking at here, as well as limited staff capability from DWR, we decided to focus moving forward primarily on the previously identified sites that DWR had noted in the initial report. So from this point on, that's going to be our universe of sites to look at. And then the task of this group is to find that 331 sites that have been ID'd down to a more manageable number to recommend from further approaches maybe in the future. So that's our primary goal, is to look at what criteria should we use to narrow down the selection out of that 300 some odd sites, and move forward. That'll be our primary focus. So with that, are there any questions to this point? Okay, hearing none, let's move on. I think Jeff will open up the next section here and give a brief presentation on the sites that have been previously ID'd and take a look at some of the details of that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Inwood.
Thanks, Doug.
And Jeff,
oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, you have the presenter's ball now, so you can share your screen.
Okay. That, where do I get that again? I don't see that on my screen.
What's that, the share screen?
Yeah.
If you move your cursor, hover around either the bottom or the top of your screen, it should drop down. There should be a toolbar that drops down where it says share screen.
I know, I saw that last week, but I don't see it.
Jeff, do you see in the upper left-hand corner, where it says share? You see that tab?
Yeah, there. Okay, share content. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so can everybody see the map in front of you or on the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So my name is Jeff Inwood. I am the chief hydrologist at the department. And what I'm going to run through real quick here is a interactive GIS map that of the state, and that shows the 331 underground sites that were identified by the department. that were ultimately reduced down to 2 by the State Land Department for the report. I'm not going to deal with the above ground sites, the dam sites. We're just going to focus on the underground sites. And so what I'm going to do is kind of move around the state, show you different locations, show you how the original 331 sites were identified, and that'll kind of set the tone for moving to the next level of coming up with criteria. I don't know how fast the screen's going to move when I zoom in and out and make changes, so bear with me. Hopefully it'll move fairly quickly. So here we go. I'm going to start by zooming in down to into Cochise County. Did everybody see that now that I'm zoomed in?
Yes.
Okay, good. So let me show you what's on the screen right now. So the yellow orangish lines are the county boundaries. The red lines are basin boundaries, or in this area right here, we're looking at the Douglas INA. The tan color represents hard rock, basically non-sedimentary rocks that are not appropriate for recharge. Anything that's white around those areas is sedimentary, basically, and potentially available to do recharge upon. So now I'm going to turn on some other features that then will work into how we selected the 331 sites. So the first thing I'm going to add are streams. And so now you see the different water courses in this general area, the blue lines. These can be everything from ephemeral streams up to perennial rivers. So that was part of the criteria that was used before, so I'm turning those on. The next thing I'm going to turn on is State Land Department lands, and that's the hatched squares primarily that you see now. And so this is the basic data sets that were used to create the 331 sites. And essentially what was done, pretty simple, lands that are not hard rock, which are the white, so they're sedimentary, that are owned by state land and have a stream or river crossing them, were what was selected. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn off the state trust land layer, and I'm going to turn on then the sites that were selected. So this orange or reddish pinkish colors are the selected sites. As you can see, they're different shapes, different sizes. Some are contiguous to each other. Some are just individual. But this is the end product of our initial analysis back in, we did that report in 2017, I believe. So I'll stop there and just see if anybody has any questions or comments on what I've gone through so far.
Well, I think there's several areas there in Cochise County that that would be beneficial, especially the Benson area. With the natural slope down to the San Pedro, it would be very beneficial to do something there. As you know, I brag a lot about Cochise County and what all they have done and are continuing to do. In order to expand that, I think they have some expertise in what they already that we could tap into. So I think there's several sites there in Cochise County that we should consider.
Agreed. And Representative Griffin, just to further zoom in on this a little bit, one thing that we noticed that some of the sites are right along what I'll call the mountain front, right up against the tan colors, and some are more towards the center of the basin. So, you know, if they're properties that are up against the mountain front, might have more potential, let's say, for capturing the mountain front runoff after precipitation events. But the streams, the properties that are more towards the center that are along streams could also capture precipitation and runoff as well.
Is there anything in the San Simon Buoy area that could be considered?
Well, let me fly up there real quick. This here. Let's see. So, bear with me here.
It's in Cochise County.
Whoop, did I go too far? Didn't I? So
Mm-hmm.
there are. They're not as prevalent. You're in this area, is what you're talking about,
Yes,
Okay.
that's the area that have challenges.
Mhm.
It's an area that has some challenges. It is a closed basin, but I think we need to take a look and see if there's anything there that we can help that area with.
Well, we obviously have some sites already identified there that meet the
Good.
criteria that we originally used.
Good.
So I was going to show some other parts of the state if that is warranted. Does anybody have any areas that are of particular interest?
How about the La Paz area?
Okay. So bear with me while I zoom out and move up there.
I have a question for someone or those people who worked on the original study. Since I wasn't around for that, can I ask my question?
Please go ahead.
In the original study, it looked at state trust land. Did the original study look at whether the state trust land had an existing lease on it or was unleased or not?
No, it did not. We simply looked at, as Jeff said, for these underground storage sites. Is it basically alluvial fill type material, not on hard rock? Was there some sort of water course, and then where those two matched, overlaying state land? That's the three filters that were used. We didn't look at the type of stream. We didn't look at any leasing or anything from the state land side, and we didn't look at any other criteria that may narrow that down a little bit. How state land itself, when they took the 300 sites and narrowed it down to the top 3 or 4 they ID'd, I do not know what was used for that internally at state land.
Okay, thanks, Doug.
Now I've zoomed into La Paz County, and question I have, I don't know how far west they went due to being close to the Colorado River. Let me just real quick overlay the state land on top of that. So it doesn't look like there was much state land property closer to the river.
Is there anything around the Alamos Dam or reservoir area?
Well, we have try to. So that's on Bill Williams, right?
Yeah. I'm looking at my map too.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it from here.
That's Army Corps and Game and Fish, so it'd be hard.
Yeah, really, the only places are up here in Butler and Butler Valley, and some here in Renegras Plain. Not much else, and some in a little bit in McMullen Valley, and a couple in Arquahela. A little something here near, probably near Quartzsite.
Oh, there's
Not a whole lot of potential sites in La Paz County.
okay. How about the Green Reservoir near in Pinell County? Is that a
I'll move over to Pinell.
All I had to do was I saw her turn around.
Representative Griffin, I'm not familiar with that. Where is that located in Pinell?
south of Casa Grande? And I do see some areas on the map that was delivered to me.
I gotta get a news.
So it looks like there are some in the southern area there,
Down here.
right? It's over to the east. Yeah, up and through there.
Oh, yeah, and I keep looking at the Pinell AMA, sorry, but yeah, the go further east, yes.
Well, that would be an area that I'd like to have you look at for potential sites.
Okay. Well, so again, in a nutshell, this is that was the exercise by DWR to identify the sites, the three basic criteria that Doug described and I described. These are the results. As Doug said, it's our universe to work from now. And Doug, does anybody else have any other questions or places they'd like to see before we move on?
Of course, Graham County, if you have, I see some in Graham County as well. If nobody else is jumping in, I will.
Yeah, they're the wrong way. Yeah, there are a number.
Yeah.
In different basins. Again, some close to the mountain front, some more towards the center of the basin.
I think those along the mountain front there, along Mount Graham, that range might be something good to look at.
Mhm.
Right in here.
Other side.
Or over here. Or this here.
Yeah, right around there, and just follow that ridge line up. See that there's a bigger pink blob. Some of that I think might be good for stormwater capture.
Mhm.
So, Representative Griffin, it was hard for us to get a map statewide to focus in on all these areas that we identified before. That's why we wanted to especially bring this interactive map to you so you could see and we could zoom in a little bit so you can get an idea of what we were working with.
Good. Well, thank you for the map that was delivered. It's, I think, 3 feet by 2 feet. So maybe we can find time to come over and visit with you. And it doesn't have all the overlays, but it's really a good map. Thank you for putting that together for me.
You're welcome.
Carol, yeah. Thanks, Carol.
My pleasure. I wish we could have gotten a higher resolution for you, but
Understand.
The beauty of GIS, you can, on an active map, you can move in and out and turn things on and off. So, okay. Well, Doug, shall we move on?
Yeah, sure. I guess, are there any other questions on the 331 sites that have been ID'd at this point? Okay. So let's move on to potential criteria. And I guess we've, as sit here listening to the discussion so far, do we want to approach this systematically across the state, creating general criteria and then just seeing how many sites get captured with that? Or do we want to focus more on a selected sites, some of those that were both Representative Griffin and Sandy ID'd, and focus on that, and maybe that would lead us to these sites have this kind of criteria, and that might be replicable across the state.
I think that's a good idea. I don't, originally, I think Carol Springer brought all of this, gosh, probably 15, 20 years ago, and wanted to look at macro water harvesting. And not much had taken place up until a few years ago. And the NRCDs has been very involved, as others, the Nature Conservancy and others has been involved as well. So that was the reason for the original bill, was to take a look at other sites and duplicate what Cochise County, I'm familiar with Cochise County is doing, so that other areas in the state can take advantage of all of the water possibilities and potential that we have. One thing in the original report that came out was excluding the areas on the general stream adjudication, and talking to the director and others, we want that requirement removed. I think it would be advantageous to go into those areas and not restrict those areas from consideration.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've discussed this with the director before. It wasn't really clear why that was particular elimination was put in place. But for this exercise, I would agree. I don't think we need to eliminate those just because of potential involvement in the adjudication process.
Okay. And originally it was intended for rural Arizona, because urban Arizona has a lot of other opportunities that rural Arizona does not. And so that, I don't want to, the non-active management areas, before they get to a serious condition, if we can assist in putting something together for storage to prevent that from happening, I think is looking ahead and something I personally feel we should consider.
Any other comments from participants?
I echo the comments on the adjudication areas. And I'm trying to figure out how do we look at areas where there are significant issues, competition for supplies and things like that. And that's why Graham County comes to mind. So blatantly, I mean, we've got a lot of issues there that I think this kind of activity could help alleviate some of those concerns and mitigate some of the actions that are taking place right now through Globe Equity. So I'm trying to figure out, how do we word something like that where there's, significant litigation over competing water supplies or fulfillment of tribal settlements, something to that, in that direction. And I like to focus these in areas where, they can do the most good.
Can I ask, are there other opportunities if we're thinking about these kinds of projects to help put communities onto a plan for more resilience? I don't know what it, I mean, I know places like Sierra Vista are really exemplary in terms of, water conservation. But if there are other places where that's not happening, is there a way to use these kinds of opportunities as an incentive to develop some planning that will lead to long-term resilience for those communities?
Let me just ask the question, Sarah. So what we're saying is that, in blatant layman's terms, that we'll do this project if you do something else.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I don't mean to be quite,
Yeah,
not
no,
quite so bald, but
yeah, no, it's easier to understand for me.
yeah, if your problem is having a big industrial farm move in, and we solve it by creating water storage, is there? I mean, maybe we want to talk with the community about measures that we can take to make sure that these supplies solve the problems that they're intended to. And I would just point to the Groundwater Management Act was, it was conditioned back in the 60s when funding for the CAP was first authorized, or not funding was, the CAP was authorized on the condition very consistently by the federal government that those places that were going to benefit do something about their groundwater overdraft. Similarly, if there's an opportunity for communities to solve a problem that won't go away with a new water supply that will still be there, is this an opportunity to help to create the context where they're incentivized to figure out the solution?
Sarah, this is Bass. That's the stick approach, and I liked the idea earlier about a solutions approach, which Mrs. Griffin talked about, related to like general stream adjudications. I think somebody else did, to resolve the problem, which everybody has unanimously agreed is an issue and a challenge. We're going to need new and more tools to solve that in a way that's not a lot of folks. And I think using this exercise to develop some areas of potential solutions that could be brought into that adjudication process, I think would garner us better results.
Yeah, Bass, I certainly wasn't, I was only thinking from the incentive perspective, but I think we agree on this. Clearly any solutions need to be determined by the community that is going to live with it. But it seems like it's an opportunity to create water security that's long-term for people.
Hi, this is Pam.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, I'm hearing the discussion and I'm understanding the points, but I'm wondering what is the scope of this document? Are those discussions within the scope of this new revised report that we're doing, or is it limited to just identifying sites, or is that part of it?
This is Carol. The scope of what this group in particular is charged to do is to recommend the criteria to help narrow the site selection. So we're specifically supposed to be recommending the criteria for the director to use in this exercise.
Thank you, Carol.
Certainly. Thanks for the question.
So to get to that, and hearing some of the specific sites that have been suggested, would it be easier for us then to maybe look at the specific sites, specific areas that we know would probably be good candidates, and then see if there are some commonalities of those that we could then use that as the recommended criteria for a larger statewide look?
That makes sense to me.
What do you think, Jeff? Does it make sense?
It does, although I kind of got the impression is from Sarah and Bass and Representative Griffin is we kind of identify the places where there's a need, and that might be, and I look at it as a basin by basin look. So once we identify a basin where there's a need, there might be 5 basins, might be 2 basins, might be 7, then we'd have to come up with criteria about how to pick sites within the basin. But I may be missing the kind of the approach that Representative Griffin and Sarah were getting at. But I think we identify a need, and then the need could be partially solved or completely solved. I don't know about that, but with some water storage. But is that what people were kind of getting at?
I think looking at the areas that are challenged, non-active management areas, because active management areas has CAP and rural does not. So looking at those areas and seeing, and maybe the ease of the projects might be a criteria as well. But I think that would be good. Need.
That's a first, looking at need is a first big cut, and then that would zoom us into certain areas, and then we have, assuming we have places already identified in each of those basins that have the need, then we could look at things more specific, like water supply availability, delivery capabilities. Is there aquifer? Is there unsaturated zones for storage capacity? Things like that. That's what is coming to mind for me from what I'm hearing.
I think that makes sense, Jeff, from my perspective. I would also, one thing I'm curious about that I would like to look at is the feasibility given whether there's a lessee or not, and accessibility and other issues. I don't know if there's regulatory issues or you know, any other kinds of challenges that are not hydrologic. I think we should look at too. I'm not sure what those are yet, but there's more than just the physical moving water, and is there water that I would like to look at.
Well, and I agree, Pam, for sure. The for me in hydrology, those I'm more interested in the physical capacity issues and physical issues, but those other things are definitely will impact the ability to do things. It's just a question of how we go about and who would do those kind of evaluations. That's some of those things really don't fall into DWR hydrology. So, but doesn't mean they can't be done. We'd have to figure out exactly what those criteria would be, and then who would be the best organization of people to do that.
So Pam, this is Doug again. One of the reasons during the first round that none of those types of issues were looked at is because of what Jeff mentioned there on who actually can make that kind of call. But it is, if you start going down that path, you know, there are all sorts of basic permitting things from even creating a flood control structure all the way up through, does this begin to impact the adjudication process, which we don't want to look at? Are we impacting surface water rights? Are we impacting, you know, it's just a huge litany of potential regulatory hurdles that you would have to get over, and they're going to vary site by site. So that's why we avoided that in the first place. And I think it would be very difficult to try to string all of those out in this exercise. So I would recommend not chasing those rabbits down those holes.
I think that's okay, but maybe at least have a discussion of that in the report, that there's all these other things to consider.
I think that's really important to provide those qualifications so that the report isn't taken as having cleared some of those potential impediments.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I believe the original report did have that, but I think being able to reiterate that again will be important.
And one other thing that I want to bring up is, you know, there was a comment made, if it doesn't recharge X amount of recharge, we shouldn't be looking at it. But I don't think the size of the project should be considered, because something in rural Arizona is you know, enhanced recharge, regardless of size, is important.
I think those characteristics, you know, physical, hydrological, all that are going to be reviewed or applied in the site that is going to be delved into at all. I would think that the criteria that we're looking at to hone in on would be, other than that, for instance, one, we would it would be an area that has a demonstrated need. Two, it would be an an area where additional resource that could be provided, to be brought to bear to create solutions for the general stream adjudications, and 3, create greater resiliency for communities. You like that, Sarah?
Naturally, I love it.
That's good. It's a good one.
I would just comment that would be a fairly manageable exercise, I believe. Kind of looking at big picture things, and then from there could be more focused criteria developed for where you need to look at a lot of those regulatory hurdles and ownership and accessibility and cost, all those other things that would then get down to a more micro level.
So
Good.
go ahead.
I said, I think that sounds good. I just don't want to not mention that there are other hurdles, like you mentioned, Jeff.
Oh yeah, when we've been talking about this internally, we come back to those, and it starts to make it seem unmanageable when you try to factor in all those considerations, regulatory challenges, legal challenges. But yeah, we can identify them, but we don't have to necessarily find the answer to each one of those issues or questions at this stage, like Doug said.
Hi, Jeff. This is Bruce. And I don't know if you have this level of data too, but it would probably be beneficial too if you had an understanding of potential yield, so that it provides some context for demand centers and potential yield associated with these projects. I know that's going to be really difficult, and I'm not sure if you have any of that data.
Well, yeah, well, anything that's gauged, we would have access to data. If we're talking about mountain front runoff, we're not going to know what the yield potential on that, or we can do rough estimates based on precipitation, but that would be challenging. We can try to take a run at that, but I'm kind of in agreement with Representative Griffin. We obviously want to get the biggest bang for your buck, but in a lot of places, anything, even if it's might not be considered large by Phoenix AMA standards, would still be beneficial, and we don't want to just not consider things just because we need a certain potential yield. But again, I think that's another thing that would come out of the next round of analysis. That would be an ideal thing to look at much more closely.
Yeah, I agree on the size. You're right. Anything would help. But, the more data you can provide, the better you'll have an understanding how much it is helping.
Agreed. Yeah. And in a perfect world, we'd have all kinds of data everywhere, and especially in these rural locations. And that's one challenge we face is, not a whole lot of in the rural basins.
Okay, so we've got the general suggested, community impacts. Are there any further comments on that? So one thing I'd like to throw out for consideration, I know right now we're focusing on the non-AMA rural areas of the state, but I'd also like to hear the group's thoughts on including a couple of the non-CAP AMAs. Specifically, that would be Prescott and Santa Cruz. They do not have.
Something that I wanted to say, Doug, is that Prescott in particular, I think we've got to be careful about excluding them. They definitely meet the need.
Right, and that's and I was thinking even down in Santa Cruz, it tends to be that would be another area that those micro basins tend to really react well when they have storm events, but when they're in between, they can get to start trending toward dewatering. That might be an area also that would respond very well to these types of projects. And they really, you compare them to Phoenix and Tucson, they are very rural by comparison.
I think it would, Doug, but we don't have very much state trust land down in Scamma, and I don't think we have very much in Prescott AMA either.
Jeff, maybe you could pull the map back up and we can check those two back out,
Well, let me share again. I think I can see if I can. Got to log back in. Bear with me a second here.
Yeah, my map shows a couple in Yavapai County, a couple areas.
Where did you want to go first, Doug?
Let's try Prescott.
Mm-hmm.
Got a couple pockets. Handful of sites.
Jeff, can you turn the streams back on?
Sure. Do you want to see all state lands, Pam?
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Well, okay, that's fine.
Good.
Yeah, so there are other state trust lands potentially. I see one thing that looks, I'm not sure why that site wasn't selected.
Yeah, it looks like there's a couple on that stream course that weren't ID'd for some reason.
Yeah.
Jeff, where your cursor was just in that area, that is the Little Chino?
Subbasin?
Yeah.
I think so. Yep.
Okay.
That then we all know that Big Chino is another area of
interest.
Of interest / need / concern, or however you want to look at it. So we want to move down to Scamma.
Any other questions on that, and we can move down south?
Yeah. Santa Cruz County. I see a couple spots there.
Whoop, went the wrong way. I'll zoom in. So not much in Santa Cruz County itself, but in the AMA, got a few more spots, locations.
Is that the soapery where those pink ones are?
Are they what?
Is that soapery wash where those pink ones are?
Not sure, Pam, sorry. Let me see if I can identify that. Bear with me a second here. Doesn't look like it. That's the one you were referring to, right, Pam, right here?
No, the one below that that's going kind of west to east.
This one?
It is soapery, okay.
Yeah. Let me.
Okay, so there's more than I thought, but I don't know why those other areas were not included in the first report, but we can look at that.
What do you mean, what areas weren't included?
When we were looking at Prescott AMA, it seemed like there were some more areas that weren't identified.
Oh, it looks like we missed a couple, is what you're meaning. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can go back and revisit the intersection of the three layers of the streams, state land, and um, alluvial material. So to catch anything else that might have been missed. I even see, for example, so looks like these two should have been counted. But I think we at least, even if we missed some, we've got an idea of where streams are, where the state lands are, and where we have alluvial material. Okay, Doug.
Yes.
There you go.
Thank you, sir. So how about this for some homework for DWR? Maybe ID some of those sites in a little greater detail in Cochise County. Was there on the upper Gila, that area up in there, was there a specific county section or basin that we would want to take a look at? Since that was, Sandy pointed out a couple of those areas along there. Is there a specific stretch of stream that we want to look at?
Let me go, I'll just use that as homework. I'll have to go back and look.
Okay. So what I'm suggesting is maybe a couple of those sites in Cochise County, that section along the Upper Gila, maybe ID one or two in Yavapai County. I think because that was such a big issue in a few years ago up there from both the AMA and then the potential transportation out of the Big Chino, that was discussed in great details about some mitigation up there. I think if we don't at least look at a couple of those up there, we'll get a lot of questions on that. And then maybe something down here in Santa Cruz as an initial subset to take a look at. Would there be any other areas, Bass or Mrs. Griffin, that you would suggest take a quick look at?
That southern area of Pinal County that Mrs. Griffin had referenced earlier, right there on the boundary of Pima and Pinal.
Okay.
Down there in that green reservoir area, down in that way.
But is that in the AMA?
Yes. The AMA that just got cut drastically.
I just bring that up, Bass, because I thought the focus was more non-CAP AMA, but
yeah, leave out Phoenix and Tucson AMAs.
I see.
Yeah, I think I'd like to look at that area. Yeah. We're looking at Santa Cruz and Prescott. Add that to it. Rural.
Okay, so what I'm thinking here is this is just kind of an initial look. We can see if there are some commonalities, some benefits we can ID, and then that way we can kind of use that as a model to take for larger applications statewide. We already know that these are a couple of the areas that need some help, could definitely benefit from this type of project, and then we can kind of then if there's the commonalities we ID, we can expand that on the larger scale statewide.
Agreed.
Sounds like a plan to me. Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Hey, Sandy, when you get some of that info kind of zeroed in, why don't you just email me and Jeff, I guess, and then we can work from there.
Yeah, I'm looking online right now. I was trying to look for the city of Safford wells to try to narrow it down.
Right.
I'll get them.
Right. Okay. Okay. Any other comments or questions for the good of the order?
Sounds good.
Okay. So what we'll do is I'll circle back with DWR to kind of get a timeline on when they feel they've got this stuff ready to come back to us, and we'll set up another meeting, and hopefully we can move forward with this and have another good discussion. I would like to point out there is the Kyle Center has a new website that they have been published. It's got a lot of interactive information in it. Sarah, are you still there?
Yeah, I appreciate the mention.
You want to give us a little background on that?
Sure. And many of you, I think, have been to a presentation or even a charrette. The project is called the Arizona Water Blueprint, and it's a web-based, very data-rich, interactive map of the state's water resources. Not quite so hydrologist as Jeff's map, which it's wonderful. I'm having some map envy. But you can go to the blueprint and see a lot of the things that we've looked at today and explore it on your own. We have about 45 different data layers, and a lot of those layers, they're map features, so you can put the layers on as we saw Jeff do today. And we have really scoured state agencies and different water providers and other places for data that we can connect to those layers. So you can pop up features on the map and find out a lot of data. You can go to the page that explains where the information came from, so you know where it all came from. And we have started to develop some explainers, which we call story maps, that use the map and other content to help explain different water issues. A big one, for example, is where does our water come from? We have a really, really entertaining one on the adjudication. So we are just finishing construction on the map, on the website that's going to hold the map. By the way, there's a really good page with tutorials and a user guide in case you're new to ArcGIS. I am pretty new to it, and I feel like every day I learn a new skill, and it's really easy to use. It's wonderful. So it's under construction any day now. We will move the website to an official ASU URL. I'm happy to share, but just among us, just us friends, a link to the map so that you can use it. I just say that there could be a little bit of disruption in this migration to the new URL, but I don't think that will happen for a couple of days yet. And we really welcome your feedback on it. Our water policy analyst, Susan Craig, who many of you know, she's worked at WIFA, ADWR, and DEQ, has been the project manager on it, and she has been working hard to put this out for beta testing and get input that we can use to improve the map. So let me know if you'd like access to it, and thank you, Doug, for mentioning it. We think it would be a great tool for this kind of discussion.
And Sarah, this is Jeff again. Yeah, Susan showed me that we had our last in-person meeting, and I was really excited about that and what it could do, because it does have some additional things. One thing that popped in my mind is wastewater treatment plants. So it could be very helpful in this effort.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, I will declare this meeting into close.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.